It was one of those peaceful afternoons where time seemed to slow, the earth breathing in rhythm with the sky, and the gentle breeze whispered through the trees. The path Jesus and his disciples walked was long and dusty, winding through the countryside under the warm, golden glow of the setting sun. They had traveled far, their sandals worn and their feet tired, yet it was not just physical weariness that weighed them down. It was the heavy burden of questions, deep, personal questions that gnawed at their hearts. The disciples had seen wonders beyond imagination. They had witnessed the lame walk, the blind see, the dead rise, and the hungry fed with nothing but a few loaves and fish. They had heard Jesus speak of the kingdom of God, of love and forgiveness, of faith and hope. But still there was a quiet unease among them, a restlessness they could not shake. Each man carried a secret worry, a nagging doubt about his place in this grand plan. They had left their former lives to follow Jesus, but what were they truly meant to become? As they approached a small village nestled in the rolling hills, the sounds of life began to greet them. Children's laughter, the rhythmic clinking of tools as families completed their day's work, and the occasional bark of a dog echoing through the evening air. The village seemed to hum with the comforting rhythms of daily life, yet the disciples felt disconnected from it. They had given their lives to a greater cause, but what did it mean for each of them personally? Were they truly on the right path? Among the group, Peter walked in silence, his thoughts swirling. He had always been the outspoken one, quick to speak, quick to act. But his impulsiveness had led to mistakes, and deep inside, he wondered if he was worthy of the role he had been given. Hadn't he already failed Jesus? And what if he failed again? Thomas, too, felt the weight of his uncertainty. Doubt had always plagued him. He wanted to believe wholeheartedly, but his mind constantly sought proof, tangible evidence of the divine truths Jesus spoke of. How could he be a disciple if he struggled so often with belief? And then there was James, who walked a few steps behind the others, his head bowed. He had always felt overshadowed by his brother John, who was known as the beloved disciple. James often wondered if he was truly significant. Did his life matter as much as the others? Was there a unique calling for him, or was he simply a supporting player in a larger story? As these thoughts churned within them, they came upon a humble potter's shop on the edge of the village. The potter sat quietly at his wheel, his hands caked with mud as he skillfully shaped a lump of clay. His hands moved with practiced ease, coaxing the clay into form with each gentle push and pull. The disciples paused, watching as if entranced by the simple yet profound scene. The potter's concentration was total. It was as though nothing existed for him but the clay and the wheel. Jesus, sensing the perfect moment to teach his disciples a deeper truth, smiled and gestured for them to sit. The group settled around him on the dusty ground, the air thick with unspoken anticipation. The potter, oblivious to the gathering, continued his work, the wheel spinning steadily under his hands. "Do you see the potter at his wheel?" Jesus began, his voice soft yet full of purpose. "Watch how he shapes the clay. Notice how, with every turn of the wheel, the clay is transformed. His hands guide it, and though the process takes time, there is nothing rushed about his movements." The disciples leaned in, their eyes fixed on the potter's hands. What had been a formless lump of clay was slowly becoming something recognizable. A vessel, elegant and strong, was emerging under the potter's careful guidance. The clay seemed to yield completely to the potter's will, trusting in his hands to bring forth its true form. Jesus continued, his words carrying a deeper meaning that touched the hearts of his followers. "There was once a young boy," he said, "who lived in a village much like this one. Every day the boy passed by the potter's shop and marveled at the beautiful vessels the potter created. The jars, bowls, and pots were so finely crafted, and the boy couldn't understand how something so plain, just clay and mud, could become something so valuable." Jesus paused, letting the image sink into their minds. They could picture the boy standing at the doorway of the potter's shop, wide-eyed with wonder, his curiosity growing with each visit. One day the boy finally gathered the courage to ask the potter, "How do you know what each piece of clay will become? How do you decide what to make? The disciples, listening intently, could see themselves in the boy's question. They too wondered about their own purpose. What were they truly being shaped into? Jesus smiled as he continued the story. The potter, a wise old man, smiled kindly at the boy and said, "Come, sit with me and I will show you." The boy sat beside the wheel, watching as the potter picked up a fresh lump of clay. "You see this clay?" the potter said, holding it out. "At first glance it seems like nothing special, just a pile of mud. But when I place it on the wheel and begin to shape it, I can see something more. I don't force the clay to become something it's not. Instead, I work with it, listening to its potential. Some clay will become a strong pot for carrying water, some will become a delicate jar for storing precious oils, and some will become a vessel to be displayed in a place of honor. But each has its own purpose." The disciples were mesmerized by the story, and it resonated deeply with their own experiences. Often they felt like the unformed clay, unsure of what they were meant to be, unsure of how they fit into God's grand design. But the boy wasn't satisfied with this answer. Jesus continued, "How do you know it won't crack or break?" the boy asked. "What if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to?" Jesus paused, looking at his disciples, knowing that many of them carried the same question in their hearts. Life was full of trials, and even as they followed him, they feared failure. What if they cracked under pressure? What if they didn't become who they were meant to be? The potter, Jesus said, smiled gently and replied, sometimes the clay does crack. Sometimes, despite all my care, a vessel may break in the fire. But even then I do not discard it. I mend it, and often the vessel becomes more beautiful because of its imperfections. It is in the mending that the vessel becomes stronger, more resilient. The clay must trust my hands, knowing that I will not abandon it, even when it seems broken. At these words, a profound stillness fell over the disciples. The image of the cracked but mended vessel struck them to the core. How many times had they felt on the verge of breaking? How often had they doubted their worth when life's trials seemed too much to bear? Peter, in particular, felt a deep stirring within him. His failures, especially his moments of doubt and impulsiveness, weighed heavily on his heart. He had spoken too quickly, acted too rashly, and in doing so, he had feared that he had jeopardized his place as a follower of Christ. He wondered if he was beyond repair, if his cracks were too deep to be mended. But Jesus, who knew Peter's heart better than anyone, turned his gaze upon him with infinite love. Placing a hand gently on Peter's shoulder, he said, "Even when you feel as though you are breaking, Peter, the Father's hands do not abandon you. He will mend the cracks. He will strengthen the broken pieces. In His hands, your life will become something even more beautiful than before." Peter's eyes filled with tears, his heart finally releasing the burden of his self-doubt. He could feel the truth of Jesus' words as if they were healing balm on his soul. It was not about being perfect. It was about trusting the hands of the one who had formed him, knowing that even his failures could be turned into something of beauty. The disciples sat in silence, the gentle hum of the village life around them fading into the background as the deeper truths of Jesus' words sank in. Each man reflected on his own inner struggles, the moments of doubt, fear, and confusion that had clouded their sense of purpose. Thomas, who had long struggled with doubt, felt a profound shift inside. He had always been the skeptic, the one who needed proof before he could believe fully. But now, watching the potter work, hearing Jesus' words, he realized that faith was not about having all the answers. It was about trusting that God was at work, even when the path wasn't clear. Jesus turned his attention back to the potter, who had just finished shaping the vessel on the wheel. It was a simple jar, but in the fading light of the evening, it seemed to glow with an inner beauty. The potter lifted it from the wheel with great care, smiling with satisfaction at his creation. He placed it aside, knowing that in time, it would serve its purpose, whether that was to hold water, grain, or something else entirely. The potter did not rush, Jesus said softly. He took his time, allowing the clay to become what it was meant to be. In the same way, your Father is not in a hurry with you. He is forming you day by day, moment by moment, into something extraordinary. Even when you do not see the purpose, it is being revealed piece by piece. James, who had often felt overshadowed and insignificant, felt a deep sense of comfort. He had spent so much of his life wondering if he mattered, if his role in the kingdom was important. But now he understood. He didn't have to compare himself to others or question his value. His purpose was being shaped by the hands of the Creator, and that was enough. Jesus rose to his feet, and the disciples followed suit, though their hearts were lighter now, their questions not fully answered but transformed. They no longer needed to know all the details of their future. It was enough to know that they were held in the hands of the Father, being shaped into vessels for His purpose. As they began to walk again, the sky had deepened into shades of purple and gold, and the lights of the village began to flicker on, one by one. The journey ahead was still long, and there would be challenges yet to come, but the disciples no longer carried the same weight of uncertainty. They were clay in the hands of the master potter, being shaped for something greater than they could yet understand. And as they moved into the twilight, following their teacher, a sense of profound peace washed over them. They did not need all the answers, for they were part of a story far grander than they could imagine. A story written by the hands of a loving Creator, who never abandoned His work and who would bring it to completion in His perfect time. With each step they knew they were not walking alone. They were being formed, mended, and made whole by the One who saw their potential long before they did. And in that knowledge they found joy, peace, and purpose beyond measure. This is end of the story. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.